Good morning, YouTube. It is 6 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and we are finally getting around to doing something with this pallet board that has been sitting up against my wall for probably over a year now, and decided, you know what, I got some new tools coming in and I need to start making space, and I just didn't want to throw it away because I have a problem with throwing away scrap wood, and I feel like I have to use every single piece of wood that comes into my workshop. And finally decided, you know what, we have to do something with this because it's just taking up space, and just decided, you know what, instead of taking all the nails and taking time to rip it apart, I'm just going to take my skill saw and just start cutting. And that's essentially what we did here. Ignore my complete ignorance for safety doing this. I just basically chopped it up and I didn't make any kind of precision cuts, but I am proud of myself because the pieces of this that I couldn't use, I did end up throwing away. So that's always a plus, because if you're a woodworker out there and you have a bunch of scrap wood and you think you're going to use it for something, just throw it away. It's just sitting there taking up space in your workshop. I mean, you might get to it, but literally this pallet has been in my garage or in my workshop for over a year, just sitting there. So finally decided, let's get rid of it. So once I cut all the boards off, initially with the skill saw, came over to the miter saw, and we're just basically making a sandwich out of all these pieces of wood here. So we're just going to do the glue up, and this project initially was going to be something absolutely beautiful in my mind. You ever have those ideas where you're just like, I really think I can make this work, I think I can make something really cool, and then you start getting into it and you're like, man, this is just not working out the way I envisioned. This is going to be one of those projects. So all we did here, just glue it up just like we've done hundreds of times before. Don't be stingy with your wood glue. Make sure to really get it in there so that it adheses really well. And you know, we're just going to sandwich this up, leave it for about 24 hours, and then we're going to come back and put it on the lathe and see what we can kind of get out of it. So using the clamps here, just doing that classic squeeze out with all the glue. That's probably my favorite part of this entire project, is watching the glue squeeze out of it. That's how you know you used a good amount. But here we are. Notice how I'm in shorts in this one. A little bit later in the video, I'm not going to be in shorts because it's going to get cold again here in Texas. But got it all sandwiched up, feeling pretty good about it. Now we're just going to go ahead and throw that face plate on there. And knowing that this is just junk pine, I know I'm not going to have a lot of issues just putting in the face plate, because that is my most probably mind-altering thing that I do, is putting this face plate on. It just gives me crazy amounts of anxiety, because just for some reason I don't have good luck putting on face plates for some reason all of a sudden. But this goes on pretty smooth, not a whole lot of issues here. It goes on no problem. So throw this onto the lathe, and we still got this square sandwich of wood here. And then we're just going to spin this down into a bowl. Initially, I was thinking, you know what, let's just make a regular pot and still do the things I wanted to do with it. But as I got into turning this, I was like, okay, we might have enough material to do a lid. Because in 2024, that's what I've been doing with the majority of my projects, is just making lids for all the bowls that I make. And I initially didn't think I was going to have enough material, but once I started to get this worked down a lot and just seeing what the material was looking like, I decided, you know what, let's just go ahead and make a lid with it and just see how we kind of do. But once I kind of got into it, I noticed just a lot of just how the wood grain is just not looking good. This is old, rotted out pallet wood. And sometimes you get some pallets that, you know, look really good once you turn them down, but this was not the case at all. So a lot of people in my previous comment, in my previous video, asked me, you know, why don't I use like turning tools? And it's because I am really bad at sharpening them. And that's why I primarily like to stick with carbide, is because even though I have a jig, I have a grinder to sharpen them, I am for some reason just not good at it, and I have ruined so many chisels trying to sharpen them. So that's why I use carbide. But anyway, back to the video. Got everything into a nice cool cylindrical shape here, and all we're doing here is just making a mortise, because at this point I've decided I'm going to go ahead and make a lid for this. And this part went relatively smooth, not a whole lot of issues. Actually, not a whole lot of issues with the project overall, but you're going to notice a little bit later I'm going to have a little bit of issue with just how this ends up looking. But once we got that done, now we're going to go ahead and take the face plate off, and then we're going to flip it onto the lathe, and then we're going to do the cut down where we're going to make the lid portion of it. And you can just see how junky this is, all the cracks that are in the wood and portions of the actually pallet bowl that aren't together, which was kind of concerning, because initially that's why I wasn't going to do a lid, It's because a lot of these pieces aren't glued up the way they need to, so I was worried about having one of those pieces kind of just fly off and hit me in the face. As you can see there, you can see these giant cracks, but I decided, screw it, it's just pallet wood. This is how we practice, so if you don't make mistakes, you're never going to learn from them, and I show failure on this channel for everything that I do, so even if this didn't work out, I was still going to go ahead forward with it and try to make a lid. But now we're just making the mortise that will eventually go onto the lid portion of this. And now I'm just deciding where I want to part this. And here we go, taking off a big chunk of it. And initially I didn't think I took off enough, but looking back on it now, I realized I took off just the right amount of it. And that came off real easy. Great thing about working with pine is that, hey, it comes off really, really easy. So it goes really smooth against the chisels. So here we are, just shaping up what will eventually be the main portion of the bowl here. And now we're actually going to start the gouging portion of it. And there's my banjo just, flopping all over the place. But this part didn't take any issues at all. Crazy part is I could tell where the glue portions were between the boards, because that felt really weird on the chisel, and I've never had that before. But we took all that down. This part literally took just a couple of minutes to do, not a whole lot of issues here. And then just working off the side of the lip of the bowl, deciding just how thick that's going to be. And then just starting and stopping. And I was really worried about that crack that you just saw there, because I've had so many times in the beginning of my woodworking career when I would try to work down the edges of the bowl and then just have a catastrophic failure where the lip of the bowl kind of explodes. So got everything down to where I wanted it, was pretty happy with it. And now we're just sanding, going from 50 grit up to 80. Not doing a whole lot of sanding here because eventually I am going to do my classic burning of the pine. So just decided just to smooth it out just a little bit, and then come back, and then we're going to do the lid portion of it. So here's the lid, just trying to get everything nice and even initially, and then we're going to size this up and try to make something cool out of it. And I was really surprised that this stuck together as well as it did, because I was really expecting one of these pieces just to kind of fly off. And for some reason, all that footage just got erased from my camera. I think my camera is full of sawdust and just all kinds of West Texas dirt over the past 4 or 5 years, and it just stopped recording. So you didn't miss anything big there. All I did was smooth it out, make a mortise, and now all we're going to do is size up the lid. So all this is here is just me flipped over, which will eventually be the lid portion of it, and hopefully the recording got the rest of it, because this is actually the first time I've watched this footage as well. But I did notice while I was doing this, the camera shuts off, and technology will fail you the most when you need it the most. So I was like, meh, it'll be okay. Continuing on. So once we got the lid portion kind of sized up, now we're just doing the same thing, sanding, going from 50 to 80 grit. And this is the mess and what it looks like after we're all done. And I was pretty happy how this turned out. It looks pretty cool, just a standard issue pine board. Nothing really to write home about, and there's all the wood shavings and everything that kind of came with that. Just made a big old mess there on the workbench, but pretty happy with it. So we're going to get this cleaned up, and then we're going to move on to the next phase of this project, which is burning the pine wood. And I know some people don't like burnt pine. I think it looks gorgeous, but for what I'm going to do with it, I just thought this would be a good accent piece initially. So here I am in my backyard, and you can see my towels in the background just flopping in the wind because it was super windy here in West Texas when we did this project. So burning it was a little bit easier because of that. But getting this burnt down and charred the way that I want it to. And then we're going to move on to this part, which was painting. I've never painted a bowl before, and I was like, you know what, I had this cool like neon pink paint from a project that I did like 3 years ago, and it's just been sitting there, and decided, you know what, let's paint over the char of the wood. And I'm thinking it's going to make this cool kind of aesthetic kind of look to it. And in my brain, I initially thought, you know what, this is going to look pretty cool. But as you're going to see here in a little bit, it's not going to look nearly as cool as I thought. So this initially goes on looking really good. I think it looks fabulous. It's bright neon pink. I think that's a cool color. And I like how the paint looks initially. And then the damn thing dried. And it looks like this red kind of color. And I was like, okay. And I was going to do this Dremel part of it anyway. Like the Dremel part was going to happen. But what I wanted it to be was like the black char against the pink. And it just did not turn out that way, because I've done this Dremel technique before in some previous projects, and I really liked the way this looks. And I thought the paint would kind of just be a nice accent to it, but like the second that I started doing this, I was like, this is going to look like just ass. And it really does. Like, it just looks awful. But I continued mission, just kept on going. It was like, all right, well, we've already messed it up. You might as well just go all the way with it. So here we are, taking the Dremel and just making these little potholes in it. And it just doesn't turn out really well. But you can kind of see the char through the paint, but the paint isn't as bright as when I initially put it on, which was kind of disappointing because that's the look I really wanted to go for, was that neon pink look. But it's like this darker red type color, and this is what it looks like. And I'm just like, God, this looks awful, and it looks like a hot mess. This bowl is absolutely trash, and I will openly admit it. I mean, it still kind of looks cool. The texture of it feels cool, and then we're just going to hit it with some lacquer just to kind of seal everything in, but this just doesn't go the way that I envisioned initially. But I'm glad we got something out of it. This is kind of what the final project looks like once the lacquer dried. It looks okay. It still does not look pretty, but I'm like, all right, cool. We learned our lesson, but we got something out of it. Use that pallet wood for something, and somebody, when I give this bowl away, will eventually pick it up. I didn't char the inside. You can just see the paint mess that's in there. I was like, man, cut our losses. But hope you liked it. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace. All right, so project is done, and this did not turn out the way I envisioned at all. It is the ugliest pallet bowl, ugliest bowl probably that I have ever made. But it's cool to get something out of it, and it's cool to do something different with that pallet wood. But in all honesty, I don't know, like from a distance it kind of looks cool, but then you get up to it and you're like, ooh, it's kind of ugly. A little bit, but this is it's different, I should say. So just a bonus project for this week. Not my best work. Overall went pretty good. Just maybe not how I envisioned it turning out in my mind. But I show everything on this channel, so this is what we got this week for the bonus. But anyway, hope you liked it. Hope you got something out of it. It was a fun little project. Finally got rid of that pallet, so that's what matters the most. So I'll see you guys in the next one, and there will be a video on Sunday. All right, peace.